Guys, next topic is called as binding. I had taught you all piping earlier, where we learned how to attach a piping onto the garment. Same way, we will be attaching a binding. It is also a feature that that's used, like say on t-shirts and stuff like that. So it's a very convenient way of attaching. So I'll be attaching here or at the bottom of the skirt. See how it goes. Okay, I'll zoom in for you to see. Right. So I go from I select the binding tool. I go from one end to the other and double click on it. It attaches another layer of fabric here for us to see. It attaches another layer, and once I simulate, it attaches like two layers of fabrics here. I should let go of the avatar to show you this. Yep, see. So a binding is attached automatically at the rim of the skirt. Now what I can do is I can go to the edit binding tool, select the binding. Once the binding is selected, I can go to the property editors and change things like what is the width of the binding do I want to. I want 0.5 inches. I can go ahead and do that. If I want any other fabric to be assigned to the binding, let's say I have a collar and I have any other material that is there in the garment. So I'll go and see here I can change the color of the binding, right? Now if I want, I can probably also go ahead and change if I want it on the front or the back, right? So if I want it under the dress or if I want it over the dress, right? Or I want it both sides, right? Front and back both. So basically just like how piping works, the binding also works the same way. It just adds another layer of fabric to the whole thing without actually adding a pattern, right? So to this. So yeah, this is how binding works. You can attach it wherever you want, on the sleeve, on the armhole. Generally a lot of places it works. So that's that. It is found here. You all can try it whenever you can. The next thing that I want to talk about is top stitch and puckering. Okay, what is top stitch? Top stitch is basically, we know what is top stitch, right? So it works the best on the 3D window. For example, I see the edges of the skirt or the corners or the edge or the sides or wherever, right? There is, suppose let's say I want a top stitch here. I'll go ahead and select top stitch, segment top stitch, and go to wherever I want to apply top stitch, like on the front. At this point I want to apply it on the side of the zipper. Let's see. Yeah, it's just come, right? So this is something that adds realism to the garment. On the other side, the top stitch has come. Now I can go ahead and change the type of top stitch I want. For example, there is on the top in the object browser, you can click on top stitch, click on the top stitch that is applied right now, and then it will open a range of properties. So let's say I want like 5 lines of top stitches. I can do that, right? This comes in very handy when you're trying to make like kanta stitch or something like that. Then I can change the size of the stitches. So I'll move it back to 1, and then I will change the size of the stitch, which is say like one being the largest. Yeah, so it's like a really large stitch size. It is not practical to have one, but then see, this is like, okay, let me change the color of the top stitch for better understanding. Apply. See, so this is the size of the stitch. If I go smaller, I can have many I can also decide if I want space between my top stitch. For example, let's say I want some space. Yeah, so I can add space between the top stitches and create like this beautiful embroidery type thingies out of it. Also, I can change the width of the thread. Like I want my thread to be thicker, so I can go ahead and make it thicker by using the thread thickness, right? And then there is obviously material. Let's say I want it in metallic material, right? So I can do this. I can go and make it into silver, and then it is like a shiny metallic thread now. Next is everything else right now is not important. Normal map is basically maps. We'll be coming to maps later on. So all of these things will come in later on in the coming classes. You can switch on the 3D. You can go all the way down and you can switch on the 3D for it to give you a much more 3D effect. But that's like very insignificant, and that comes in into use when you're trying to render and all. So let's just do this one, yeah, for now. And between each top stitch also I can decide where I want the top stitch. Sometimes I want it very close to the, say, right now I want it very close to the zipper. I can actually make it farther also, right? I can decide wherever I want it. And this way you can actually make multiple, this internal lines, and each internal line you can apply a top stitch, and you can kind of create an embroidered pattern out of it. So this is basically top stitch. You can edit the top stitch by clicking on the edit top stitch tool, and when you select the top stitch, it will take you to certain kind of other features, right? Where what if I want my top stitch to turn here and become continuous at the bottom also. So for that I'll first have to apply top stitch at the bottom, and now let's say I don't want it crossing here. So what do I do is I go to edit top stitch tool, I select these, and then I can change features from here. Basically, if I want it right angled, so I'll have to apply one single top stitch. For this I'll have to delete these two, and I will have to apply free top stitch like this. Yeah, so then this becomes another kind. So you can, there are many ways to do it. There is segment top stitch where one segment will be having stitches, then there is free top stitch, and then there's seamline top stitch. I generally never ever use seamline top stitch. Free and segment top stitch kind of does the job for me. Yeah, so you all can go and experiment, try and make some pattern out of seam lines, yeah, a top stitch, and see like if you can create like a kanta pattern on top, or on the side. That's that. And then next is puckering, where puckering is basically, it's also one feature which is very important to bring realism to the garment. So if I go for segment puckering and I go to the side of the skirt and I apply it, look what just happened. It has created, so anyway, when there is a stitch, the fabric kind of folds a certain way, and just to bring the realism to the, now after this your garments will start looking much realistic. I've been trying to apply puckering on both sides. Somehow it's not happening, but you get an idea of how puckering looks like when you apply it on the garment. Yes, so you can apply it actually everywhere. The only problem with top stitch and puckering and things like that is once you apply a lot of it, it kind, just like internal lines, it kind of makes your computer slower, and if you do not have a higher processing power, then it interferes with your movement throughout the workspace. So it is recommended for you to apply it towards the end of the project, when you're done with all the pattern making, all the sewing, all the internal lines and everything. When they're done with, towards the end you make all of this, and then after that change particle distance to see a very good looking garment. So for now, just practice top stitch and puckering, and if you have any questions related to that, Do it, there is some more time, so 10-15 minutes you can spend on experimenting with top stitch and puckering. Go for it. I told you about binding, top stitch and puckering. Apply all these three, please. Coming to the other section called as elastic, right? So I have increased the size of the sleeves here of my model so that we can apply some elastic in between these to get some puffed effect on the sleeves. Okay, for that I'll need to activate internal lines. I'll go to edit pattern tool, click on the base of the sleeve, and I will offset as internal line. Once I have internal lines, like say I want 3 internal lines in between, I can select all of these, go to the property editor, and then I can activate something called as elastic. It is checked off. I can check it on. Okay, once I check it on, I'll simulate. A certain kind of elastic sense has come here. Now if I want to make it more elastic, I can go ahead and change the ratio of it, right? Or I can change the strength of it. That way we can make further changes and make the elastic either loose or tight. If it becomes too tight, then the problem is that you won't be able to move it as well. So it has to be in the practical limits. Like it cannot, the ratio cannot be too less, right? You can increase the strength. Simulate it, and then you can work with it. You can apply it on the edges of the waistband or wherever you think you want to put elastic. Like this. There is another feature called as shirring. Okay, with elastic it works hand in hand. So the difference between shirring and elastic in real life is elastic comes like a band mostly for us, right? When we are trying to do pattern making, shirring is basically when you put bobbin elastic in the bobbing wheel and then you stitch with it. Whatever is created is called shirring. Okay, so here the feature looks pretty much similar, but there are both features applied here. I'll do the shirring and I will show you how that also looks. So on one sleeve we'll apply shirring and on the other sleeve we'll apply elastic. In this I have shirring checked on, right? And when I simulate, shirring is not as effective as elastic is. I can go ahead and change the it does not look that strong, right? So shirring is applied here basically, but it's not showing much of a difference. So basically shirring is to be considered as a very loose form of elastic essentially. Now when I give it with elastic, the difference is in one there is shirring applied, and in one is shirring and elastic both applied, and in the other one there is just elastic applied. So what shirring does is it just enhances the elastic appearance. You are not going to be able to see shirring without elastic applied. Look, so here on the left only elastic is applied, while on the right shirring and elastic both are applied. I can tighten the elastic here. So basically when you are using shirring and elastic together, then in conjuncture it looks the best. Yeah, look. So in the right elastic के साथ I have applied shirring as well. On the left just elastic is applied. By just learning top stitch, puckering and all of these things, a whole new realm of creativity opens for you. You guys can try a lot of things. For example, I just used Topstitch to create a, a texture like this on the surface of the fabric, as well as, you know, you can create any shapes, whatever shapes randomly you want to create. You can doodle, and then you can like kind of run embroidery on it and then work on it. It's not just something that, you know, is functional. It can also be very aesthetic if you do use it correctly. There is one more thing in Topstitch. When you keep exploring, there's also something called as a shape. Okay, so that way it changes the shape of the Topstitch. You can try doing that. um, See, I can change the shape to zigzag or buttonhole or overlock or any of these. I clicked on buttonhole, and then I went to 0.5, and then I changed the color of it. Space. Yeah, like this. So you can work with there. So there are 2-3 parameters. So you can keep changing, or permutation combination of these length, width, space is what works here. So you can try changing multiple parameters and see how what works out for you.